Close your eyes and feel the object in your hand. Your phone, a book, a cup of coffee. You feel its weight, its shape, its texture. But there is something more, something dormant in that touch. A potential for a deeper kind of knowing. What if you could touch a conversation and feel its underlying tension? What if you could grasp a business negotiation and sense its hidden point of failure? What if you could place your hand upon the chaos of your own life and feel the single thread that, if pulled, would bring it all into order? This is not magic. It is an ancient martial principle, forgotten in our noisy world. It is called the listening hand. To understand it, we must go to a rain-soaked dojo in 17th century Japan. Here, two swordsmen face each other. One is young, strong, aggressive. The other is old, his movements economical. The young warrior attacks with blinding speed. The old master does not meet force with force. Instead, he steps slightly, his sword barely seeming to move. The young man crashes to the floor, bewildered. The old man did not defeat him with strength. He defeated him with understanding. This is the essence of Kuzushi, the art of unbalancing. And its first and most critical step is not action, but perception. Sen no sen, to perceive the intention before the movement is made. The master did not see the attack. He felt the commitment behind it. He listened with his entire being, and the opponent's own energy became his downfall. The weapon of the true strategist was never the sword. It was a cultivated, silent sensitivity to the invisible currents that govern all conflict and harmony. Our story begins with a man named Kenji, though his struggle is universal. In the modern world, Kenji was a negotiator, a man who lived in a prison of words. Contracts, arguments, persuasions, all were a battle of clauses and volume. He prepared relentlessly, armed with data and talking points, yet he constantly found agreements collapsing for reasons he couldn't name. He felt perpetually one step behind, reacting to conflicts instead of shaping them. His life was a series of forceful shoves against immovable objects, leaving him exhausted and ineffective. He had strength, but it was blunt. He had will, but it was unguided. He lacked the one thing the old swordsman possessed, the ability to feel the unseen geometry of the moment just before it shattered. Chapter 1. The Weight of the Sword. Kenji's awakening did not come in a boardroom, but in a moment of quiet defeat. After a particularly disastrous deal, where a partner he trusted suddenly turned hostile, he retreated to a secluded park. He replayed every word, every point, and could find no logical flaw in his approach. Yet, he had lost. As he sat there, a memory surfaced, a fragment from a book on Musashi. The legendary swordsman wrote of perceiving distance in his dokudo, his path of aloneness. He didn't just mean physical space. He meant the intangible distance between two minds, the gap between a spoken word and its true intent. Kenji realized he had been deaf to this distance. He heard language, but he did not listen to the current beneath it. He was trying to read a river by staring at the rocks on the bottom, never understanding the flow of the water that moved around them. His first lesson was one of surrender, to stop trying to shout over the river's noise, and to instead learn to feel its current. This leads us to the core principle, Mushin, the state of no mind. It is not emptiness, but a clarity undisturbed by the chatter of thought, fear, or desire. The samurai cultivated Mushin so that in combat, the mind would not fixate on an opponent's blade, or on a technique, or on the fear of death. It would remain like still water, perfectly reflecting the reality of the situation. For Kenji, his mind was never still. It was filled with his own arguments, his desired outcomes, his anxieties. This internal noise acted as a wall, blocking any subtle information from reaching him. To develop the listening hand, he first had to silence the internal dialogue. He began with a simple, non-negotiable discipline, 10 minutes of silent sitting each morning. Not meditation with a goal, but the practice of letting thoughts pass like clouds without grabbing onto them. He was not seeking peace. He was sharpening a receptor. Chapter 2. Cultivating the Still Water. The discipline of silence began to create space within him, but a vessel must be filled. The next step was to redirect his attention outward, not with analysis, but with bare sensation. Here, we turn to the Zen concept of Chowa, often translated as harmony, but more accurately described as the search for balance within any situation. Chowa is active listening on a cosmic scale. Kenji started his practice not with people, but with objects. He would hold a stone, and instead of thinking about it, he would feel its temperature, its density, the slight imperfections against his skin. He would drink tea, focusing solely on the journey of the warmth from cup to lips to throat. This was sensory calibration. He was teaching his nervous system to receive information without immediately labeling it. He was learning to feel first and to think later. The sword hand must be steady, but it is the mind that must be fluid. With this nascent sensitivity, Kenji then applied it to his environment. He would sit in a cafe and practice feeling the room, not judging, not storytelling about the people, but simply noting the quality of energy. Was it frantic? Was it relaxed? Was there a pocket of tension near the window? He learned to sense the subtle shift when a group's conversation turned from casual to serious. He was practicing kankaku, or felt sense, developing an intuition for the emotional and energetic topography of a space. He started to notice in meetings that he could feel a disagreement forming before a single contradictory word was spoken. It manifested as a slight tightness in his own chest, a change in the air pressure of the room. This was the listening hand beginning to awaken. It was no longer just his skin that could feel, but his entire presence. Chapter 3. Touching the current. The true test came when Kenji returned to negotiation. He entered a discussion about a joint venture, but he left his notes in his bag. His sole intention was not to win points, but to touch the current of the conversation. As the other party spoke, Kenji did not plan his rebuttal. He listened to the tone, the pauses, the slight emphasis. He watched the subtle shifts in posture. He was feeling for Kuzushi, for the unspoken weight, the hidden point of imbalance. Midway through, the executive made a firm, reasonable demand about timelines. Logically, it was sound, but Kenji felt a dissonance. The man's words were strong, but his energy had retreated, becoming defensive. The true weight was not in the timeline. It was a fear of being overburdened. Kenji, instead of arguing the point, gently said, "It seems the concern is less about the date and more about ensuring your team isn't stretched too thin during the initial phase." There was a profound silence. The executive's posture softened. The invisible resistance collapsed. They had finally addressed the real obstacle. This is the application of minimal, perfectly timed force. Kenji did not push. He perceived the imbalance. The man's energy was leaning back in fear, and he merely acknowledged it. That acknowledgement was the slight, precise pull that brought the structure into harmony. He used the man's own hidden concern as the point of leverage. This is the pinnacle of strategy, whether with a sword or with words, to use the opponent's or partner's own energy to guide them to the resolution. Victory is not in domination, but in the elegant resolution of tension. The listening hand had felt the invisible architecture of the conflict and found the single keystone. Chapter 4. The hand that holds nothing. The final transformation for Kenji was internal. The listening hand is not a tool you use. It is a state you inhabit. It required a shift in identity, from being a person who forces outcomes to one who perceives and guides currents. Musashi called this Rai, the inner principle that precedes all effective outer form. Kenji's discipline became seamless. His morning silence, his sensory awareness, his calm presence in discourse. It was no longer practice. It was who he was. He found this sensitivity bled into every aspect of his life. He could feel the unspoken need in a friend's voice. He could sense the right moment to act on a project, as if feeling a tide turn. His actions became fewer, simpler, and vastly more potent. He had learned the paradox of the master, to hold your skill so lightly that your hand is always open, always empty, and therefore able to feel everything. The storm of the world is not fought, it is navigated. The greatest warriors were not the strongest, but the most perceptive. They understood that before a sword is drawn, before a word is spoken, the battle is already won or lost in the silent, felt space between two forces. Your life is filled with these invisible currents. In your relationships, your work, your own mind, the relentless noise of modern existence has calloused your innate ability to feel them. Your task is to sand that callus away. Begin with silence. Then, feel the weight of the cup in your hand. Listen to the space between words in a conversation. Seek not the loudest point, but the point of quietest tension. Do not grab, do not push. Simply feel. And in time, you will sense the subtle pull, the gentle lean, the hidden architecture of the moment. Your hand, now listening, will know precisely where to rest, and with the slightest of touches, it will bring the entire teetering world into balance. Thank you for listening. What you have just learned is not a set of techniques, but a path. The path of the listening hand. It begins with the cultivation of inner silence, of Mushin, to quiet the noise that clouds perception. It grows through the deliberate practice of sensory awareness, of Chowa, to feel the true weight of the world directly, without the filter of thought. It is mastered in the application of Kuzushi, where you learn to sense the point of imbalance in any situation, be it a conflict, a conversation, or a personal challenge, and apply minimal, precise force to resolve it. This is the art of moving through the world not by pushing against it, but by understanding its flow and guiding it from within. Now, I have a question for you. In what area of your life have you been pushing against an immovable object, using only force, when what you might need is to first feel for the current? Think of a recurring struggle, a persistent tension. Where could you step back, become silent, and simply listen for the true shape of the problem? Share your reflection in the comments below. I read them all. If this perspective resonated with you, if you felt a shift in your understanding of strength and perception, then consider subscribing. This channel is dedicated to exploring these timeless principles, to turning ancient wisdom into a practical discipline for modern life. Thank you sincerely for your time and your attention. Until next time.